Hi, I'm Gavin Syme and welcome to Perthshire Online TV. Yes, I'm on my own this week. My co-host Vivian is over in Italy on holiday for the weekend, so you've only got me doing the introduction this week. But with the show this week we have Dr. John Hulbert, who's the Provost of Perth. He popped in for an interview. We also have Peter Marshall from Perth and Kinross Council, and Peter's actually on the planning side and he's talking about the proposed third new bridge across the Tay in Perth. And Vivian also chats to Alison McKean from local solicitors McCash and Hunter. As they say, it's on with this week's show. We have Dr. John Hulbert, Provost of Perth, here in the studio today. Provost, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Provost, one of the highlights that you discussed during your tenure in office over the past 5 years has been during the Perth 800 celebrations, and I think there was a very memorable conference that you attended called Perth, a Place in History. Is that correct? Why did that mean so much to you? And it's very important because I think it ties in quite importantly with the us regaining our city status as well, doesn't it?
Yes, I think the city status, we had a tremendously good brochure and a document to present for city status, but it required, to be successful in that competition, required more. And I think the whole competition built very much on the Perth 800 programme. And an important part of that was to establish in the minds of the people of Perth and of Scotland what Perth's place in history was. I recall 4 or 5 years ago when I mentioned that Perth had been the capital of Scotland, people were pretty dismissive. They thought, well, I don't really think so, you know, it wasn't really the capital of Scotland. Undoubtedly, Perth was the capital of Scotland from around 850, 843 AD right up until the mid-15th century. It was the place where the kings lived. It was the place where important treaties were signed when the Western Isles were ceded back to Scotland from Norway. The treaty negotiated after the Battle of Largs in 1263 was negotiated in Perth, and it's called the Treaty of Perth. And the anniversary of that treaty is next year, 2013, right. The 650th or 750th anniversary, and we'll be celebrating that. A very important treaty. Now, the fact that Perth was the capital of Scotland needed to be reinforced in the minds of the people of Perth and of Scotland, and I think Perth, a Place in History, did so. Perth was the capital right till the middle of the 15th century, and thereafter was officially the second city of Scotland. Now, this was challenged by Dundee, which thought it was bigger and more powerful and more industrial than Perth, and it felt it should be the second city. And this was challenged and was raised at the Court of Session in 1603. It had been raised once or twice, but finally in the Court of Session in 1603, with James VI in attendance, and there the precedence of Perth coming after Edinburgh as now the capital was established and maintained from then right up until 1975 when city status was taken away.
So we've always had a little bit of friendly rivalry with Dundee for many a year.
I don't think, certainly if you read the records round about in the 1500s, it wasn't so friendly.
Promise. Thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Fairways provide cost-effective HR support, from contracts to recruitment, health and safety to training. Fairways, working with you, for you. Visit fairways-uk.com or call Perth 632 561 for a free consultation.
I did it Fairways.
Hi, I'm Gavin Syme from Perthshire Online TV. We, the team at Perthshire Online TV, like the Peel to Save initiative. We were so impressed that Perthshire Online TV will be adding the Peel to Save Perth fundraising card to our website shopping cart so that you have the opportunity to buy the cards online. For those of you who don't know, Peel to Save cards are credit card sized so they fit neatly into a purse or wallet. They contain 64 individual peel-off vouchers with great deals from local businesses in and around Perth. In total, the cards are worth over £400, but the cards only cost £10, and we will be donating £5 from every card sold to a different good cause every month. Consumers only need to redeem 1 or 2 vouchers and they can recover their £10. So it's a self-funding fundraiser. In total, the offers are worth, as I said, over £400. If you need more information, please take a look at Peel to Save Perth on Facebook or peeltosave.co.uk. Peel to Save Perth is a real community initiative, and a number of fundraising groups are already involved. When times are tough for everyone, local consumers are getting something in return for their donation to good causes. Local businesses are receiving support from the local community in return for their fantastic discounts and offers. Fundraisers have a new and risk-free means of securing donations, so everyone wins. This is really important when fundraising for many good causes is being cut or is hard to come by, and when our city centres and high streets are also under threat. So, Perthshire Online TV and Peel to Save Perth have got together. We will be promoting a Peel to Save card for a different fundraiser every month. We'll promote the card on the TV show, and you can buy the card online on our Perthshire Online TV website. To be selected as our Good Cause of the Month, please email us with your name and contact details and a brief explanation of what you do and why you think you should be selected. If you're selected, and the selection is at random, you'll enjoy free promotion on Perthshire Online TV for that month, in addition to receiving revenue from all the cards sold online that month. So it's a really good initiative, a win-win all round. To be eligible, you need to be a non-profit group, organisation, individual or registered charity. This would include schools, clubs, youth groups, sports clubs, churches and so on. So please send in your details now, and good luck for the first challenge. I'm delighted today that we're actually joined by Peter Marshall from Perth and Kinross Council, who's going to be giving us a little bit of an overview of some of the local development plans, and specifically around a new bridge in Perth to aid congestion in the town centre. Peter, welcome to Perthshire Online TV.
Thank you.
So, give us a little bit of an overview about what this third bridge is actually, what the plans are, and what it's all about. We've actually got a map for the viewers as well, so you can refer to that on screen as well.
Sure. Well, as viewers will probably know, the whole issue of a bridge over the Tay, and a third bridge really, has been debated for probably 30 years now in Perth. But our modelling has predicted that we're reaching a saturation point in a number of key junctions within Perth. And with the rate of growth we've been experiencing in Perth and Kinross, as you may know, Perth and Kinross has been one of the fastest growing areas in Scotland for the last 15 years. We're coming to the point where we really need to bring forward the transport proposals to mitigate the impact of the increased traffic. So we've been looking at various options for a bridge across the Tay, the north of Perth, to help relieve some of the traffic congestion, particularly in and around the town centre, where we've actually got air quality problems in there. We breach European standards in terms of air quality. So it's about freeing up junctions, keeping free flow of traffic, but also about improving the air quality in the town. And that's been key to bringing forward these proposals.
So where's this third bridge actually going to physically be located then? Where's it connecting from and to?
Well, perhaps we can look at the plan and explain where it's going. What we've got is a connection from the Crieff Road, a new junction there in the McDermott Park area, connecting through some of our big strategic development sites at Bertha Park, going through from west to east, where we meet the A9, with a new junction in the A9 somewhere, well, really about halfway between Lunkerty and the Inverarmond roundabout. Now that route has been narrowed down from looking at 3 options, and the one which was looked at in our previous public consultation, the main issues report stage, was much closer to Lunkerty, and this attracted some adverse comments from residents in the area.
Right.
So we've been looking at a route further south now, and from there it connects over north of the racecourse and then to the north of Scone between Perth Airport and the current edge of Scone. So it's a big project, probably in the region of 80 million for just the bridge and the connection to Scone, But overall, the package of measures, including the new A9, A85 junction at McDermott Park, plus a range of other measures like new park and ride sites, the north of Perth and out the Dundee Road side, some minor improvements in and around the town centre, will bring the total bill to probably in the region of 120 million. So
Right.
quite challenging funding package.
Completely. And how if you move that forward, how does that funding actually work? Is that purely the council that funds this, or are there other organisations and bodies in Scotland that contribute towards it?
Well, I think we're going to have to look at a package of measures. Traditionally, we've been looking at developer contributions towards some of the costs of this, but clearly some of the capital funding will be coming direct from the council. But actually delivering the whole development plan involves other infrastructure as well, like drainage infrastructure, schools infrastructure.
Of course, yeah.
So the total infrastructure requirements are probably between 200 and 300 million to deliver the developments identified here. So it is challenging. We're looking at the development contributions policies, and we'll be working on that over the next few years.
So it's a big project. What's the process and the key steps and the timeline associated to this? I mean, this isn't going to be something that we're not going to wake up next year and see there's a new bridge appeared all of a sudden, you know?
Yeah, no, it's quite a long, complex process, and we're already a number of years through that process, looking at the design, discussing potential junction distances with Transport Scotland. But the key stages now is we've identified this route corridor in the local development plan, and we need to get down to the engineering drawings now and find the precise route within that route corridor. That in itself, plus the negotiations with Transport Scotland and getting the key consents in place, will take probably minimum of 3 years. And then the construction phase was a 2-year contract for the Cross-Tay Link Road. So, you know, absolute minimum, we're probably talking 2018 before it can be opened.
Right, okay.
But I say work on the funding package is going to be the key element to when it can actually be delivered.
And I mean, generally, it's great that you're in the studio here today, but I assume that you have other communication channels out there into the Perthshire residents. How do you propose, actually? Do you have a series of events and things that you're working through at this point?
Yes. We've published the proposed plan, including the Link Road proposal, and we're going out at the moment. We've got 13 events, with 7 have taken place, where we're inviting the public to come in and visit us and see their proposals with an exhibition and discuss it with officers. So the 7 events so far, we've spoken to over 750 people.
Right.
And that's not just a quick comment. Some people are spending 10, 15, 20 minutes in with this, some even longer. So we're getting the message over to a lot. It's also available online on the council's website, and people are viewing it there.
And that's www.pkc.gov.uk/proposed LDP.
That's
Local
right,
Development
yes.
Plan. Yep.
And we're really inviting comments from people by the 10th of April. And that's the planning process. There are also parallel processes to go through in getting trunk road consent from the Scottish Government, and they'll be ongoing as well.
Great. Peter, Alison, thank you very much for coming in and giving us a one overview. I'm feeling very well educated myself on the subject matter now, and hopefully you can pop in again maybe in the coming months and give us an update.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
We more often than not associate the phrase power of attorney with the elderly. However, I'm joined today by local solicitor Alison McKean from McCash and Hunter, who advises that anyone over the age of 35 should give this serious consideration. So welcome, Alison. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Now, 35, that seems very young, but before you explain this to us, what exactly is power of attorney? What does that mean?
That's a question we're asked quite often. I deal with a lot of powers of attorney. A power of attorney essentially is a document which you sign to authorise another person to sign, transact or make decisions as if you yourself were signing, transacting or making those decisions. Obviously there's a great deal more to it than that, but that is a very brief summary of what the document actually means.
Right, so who would need this?
Well, I would take the view, because really of experience of being a solicitor for a long time, and you see many things, we feel that there isn't enough information in the public domain about the importance of powers of attorney. Life can be very unpredictable. Powers of attorney tend to be associated in people's minds with the elderly, and that's understandable, because obviously statistically, as we get that bit older, perhaps we're more likely to need assistance for different reasons. But life being unpredictable, people travelling the world, depending on their occupation, etc., we do recommend, 35 is not a legal age. We just tend to say to people, slightly jokingly, you're over 35, we think you need to think about, give serious consideration to signing a power of attorney. Now, many clients are very taken aback by that. There's not enough information out there about this, but I was at a course recently where the statistics showed that there's been a very great increase in the number of powers of attorney being registered. The current system of powers of attorney came into force on the 1st of April 2001. Powers of attorney generally have been around for a long time, but the present system in Scotland since April 2001. The reason why we recommend this is because if, very sadly, you're overtaken by sudden or unforeseen illness or accident which renders you incapable of providing instructions to a solicitor, if sadly you don't recover speedily, or if not at all, then if you have a power of attorney, those nearest and dearest to you can take over. In other words, your attorney, obviously the person you've chosen, can take over and deal with matters on your behalf. If there is no power of attorney, the only alternative normally is for the family to appoint a solicitor to have a guardian appointed. Now that is a much more expensive exercise. We're talking about £2,500 to £3,000.
Wow, that's
to
a
have,
lot,
it certainly
isn't it?
is, and it takes weeks, if not months, not because the solicitors are taking ages, but just because of the procedure involved. Therefore, for a much more modest sum, I have to say, a power of attorney can be signed and registered, and in fact it can even be held in abeyance until it's ever needed. We all hope it won't ever be needed, but it's the best action you can take to cover that eventuality.
And often by 35, I know we've said this age, and it's, as you say, it's not written in stone.
Not at
all.
all.
Often that's when people do have more responsibilities, don't they?
do.
They've maybe got children, a business.
Exactly so.
Various things.
I think there is quite a bit of misunderstanding actually in the public domain about the legalities of someone signing or acting for another person. I don't mean people are deliberately signing fraudulently for their family member, but I think there's an assumption which is wrong that my husband or my child can actually deal with that. I've had clients say, my daughter would just deal with that for me, dear, but actually they can't. For example, if the mum is very sadly ill to the extent that maybe the house needs to be sold to buy a ground floor flat because her mobility has been affected, then her husband or her daughter cannot sign the title deed selling that lady's house unless she has already granted her husband or her daughter a legal power of attorney to do that. So you can't, even if the house is in joint names between husband or wife or between brother and sister, whoever it may be, you cannot sign someone else's name on the title deed.
And the other person can't just do it, you know.
No, you can't just sign somebody else's name. And in addition, checks is another obvious thing. You know, the banks have got very strict data protection rules, and they cannot give out information about bank statements or how much you do or don't have in your account without legal authority having been given. Now, I could give you many, many examples, but these are two obvious examples which hopefully people will relate to and understand. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. People think we don't need that, but actually you might need it. And that's the point. None of us knows whether we might need it because we don't know what's going to happen to us. And it's not scaremongering. It's just practical. Can I give you an example? There's two examples I could give you. One positive and one rather negative, I'm afraid. The positive one is that a few years ago, a lady and gentleman, lovely folk, maybe in their 60s I think they were at the time, they were perfectly compos mentis, lovely people, came to see me and I explained about powers of attorney. They thought about it, thought that was a good idea, and they signed them. I saw the lady a couple of years later, happened to be having a coffee somewhere, which is maybe not unusual, and she came across to me and she said, "I'm so glad, I want to thank you for recommending this." Sadly, her husband had really been taken very ill, very suddenly. She'd been able to take over and deal with things in a practical fashion because the power of attorney was there.
Yeah.
Because of the illness which the gentleman suffered, she would otherwise have had to go through the guardianship order procedure. So that's one straightforward example about the benefit of having one done already.
And that makes a very difficult situation even more difficult to put up with, doesn't it?
If a power of attorney is not there, and those who are watching who have had experience of that can perhaps understand what I'm meaning. The other example, which is a negative example, is that we had a client, a very nice man, but had his own mind very much, and he was getting on in years. We had talked about power of attorney several times, and he had actually granted he had granted a financial power of attorney. There are two kinds, which we'll come to in a minute.
Okay.
He had granted the financial kind, which is strictly speaking called a continuing power of attorney. So at least that had been dealt with. But he had fallen out, I'm afraid, with one or two of his family members, and he had already made his daughter a welfare power of attorney, but he cancelled that, he revoked it officially by signing a document to that effect. So he had no welfare power of attorney. Sadly, he became very, very ill to the extent that he didn't know what was going on, and there was no welfare power of attorney. There was no one who could say, well, with confidence, speak to the doctors and see what was to happen. Anyway, to cut a long story short, his family had to go through a guardianship order to get a welfare power of attorney, and that could have been avoided had he given us instructions for a new welfare power of attorney. It all sounds a bit negative, and people might think that's just lawyers trying to make money, but honestly it is not.
It's not,
good
no.
advice.
And it's the practical issues, because
Yes.
I know off camera you were telling me about there's certain decisions that we take for granted in everyday life.
Yes.
How you have your hair, what you're going to wear.
That's right.
What you're going to eat. Now, you were telling me that all of this, is what you have to consider when you're appointing who the power of attorney is going to be, isn't it?
That's
Someone
exactly
who will
right.
carry out what you want. Is that right, Alison?
Yes, where an attorney is appointed, they must act in the best interests of you, if you're the person who's given the power of attorney.
Right.
So they're in a position of trust. Anyone who is appointed as an attorney, you must feel you trust them 110%, if I could put it that way. They must act in your best interest. It's actually a labour of love largely to be somebody's attorney if it's a family member, because you're helping that person. You're going to the bank, you're maybe paying things for them, you're looking after their house and their general welfare and interests. When a person is compos mentis, nobody can make decisions on their behalf regarding medical care and attention, where they should live, even what clothes they wear or how their hair is done. These are all welfare matters.
Right.
And I think it might be appropriate at this stage to mention there are two main kinds of power of attorney now in Scotland. One is called a continuing power of attorney, and that really deals mainly with financial, property and general administrative matters. It's very wide-ranging, but that summarises the main powers. The other kind is called a welfare power of attorney, and the difference is, as I've said, it's about medical care and attention, where you should live, what clothes you wear. These are such personal things that no one else can make these decisions unless the doctor says you don't know what's happening. Okay,
Right.
so the doctor will need to sign a certificate saying you're not compos mentis before these welfare powers come into effect. Now, mostly clients do both at the one time. You can do the two in one document. So you can have the continuing powers and the welfare powers all in one document. That saves a little bit of money.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that continuing powers come into force immediately, or virtually immediately after they've been registered. So if you don't like that idea, and many people don't, especially if you're reasonably young, that means you're under 60, 70, I don't know, you can interpret that for yourself. A lot of people don't want them to be able to use the powers immediately, so we recommend adding what we call caveats. Now, these are clauses which say, actually, nobody's to use these powers unless I myself as the person giving the power of attorney, sign a letter to that effect. So I have control over it, or my doctor has certified that I don't know what's going on, that I've lost mental capacity. So only you or your doctor in these circumstances can actually activate or trigger the power of attorney.
So that gives you a bit of protection. Someone's not going to take your rights away.
Exactly. And I think it's important to emphasise that even where the continuing or financial powers come into effect, that doesn't mean that the person hasn't still got the right to deal with their own affairs, and we're at pains to explain that to clients, especially where people are a bit more elderly.
Yeah.
They worry that their sort of the power's being taken away from them.
Their independence, really,
their independence and their dignity to a certain extent is being taken away. And I'm at pains to say to people that's not the case. Your daughter or your son or your husband or wife, if you've appointed them, they're there to help you. They're there as well as you.
Yes.
They would only be instead of you if you don't know what's happening.
Yes.
You see that?
That's really interesting. I learned a lot there. I didn't
Thank you.
realise all that. Now, one very important point though is if you want to take out a power of attorney,
yes,
what is the procedure?
How do you go about it?
How do you do
You
it?
do really need to go to a lawyer. I mean, it's true to say that non-solicitor advisors do sometimes provide advice. I won't go into that. I am a solicitor, so I would have to recommend that people instruct their solicitor. And one of the reasons for that is that there is a certificate on the back of a power of attorney which must be signed either by a qualified Scottish solicitor or a registered Scottish general practitioner, your doctor in other words. Only these two sets of people are normally qualified to sign the certificate. And the certificate is there for a reason. It's for people's protection. So if a client comes to me and I feel they're really not understanding what I'm saying, I can't proceed. I won't proceed with taking instructions for a power of attorney if they don't understand. We must sign a certificate saying that in our opinion, the person who has signed fully understands the nature and implications of the document. So we have a very high standard of professionalism there to maintain, and I hope we do maintain that. And we cannot sign a certificate where a person really doesn't understand. We're often asked to go and see people who have been diagnosed with illnesses such as Alzheimer's, and that in itself does not preclude us from taking instructions, because often the person understands very well what we're saying, although sadly their condition may deteriorate quickly or more slowly, you hope. But that doesn't mean in itself you cannot instruct a power of attorney or the person hasn't got capacity. It's quite subtle. We've got to make sure that in our opinion the person has got legal capacity, and that means that they understand fully and they're able to provide us with instructions. And that sometimes is quite a difficult judgment call. If there is an uncertainty, we think, well, yes, we do believe they, in essence, understand the document. Sometimes we will write to their doctor to take a second opinion before we sign the certificate.
Excellent.
So there's quite a lot involved in it.
There is a lot involved.
Yes,
it really
but we
is.
do recommend, and in a way, that normally would only happen when somebody is elderly and maybe not just functioning. They're not themselves, you know. Whereas if you've done it when you're over 35, but before, you know, maybe more advancing years, you're young, fit and healthy, that's the time to take these decisions. And that's why we do ask clients to give serious consideration, and we say from the age of 35 upwards. And it's a bit of a joke sometimes if people are clearly well over 35, we'll say to them, well, I think you're over 35, so you need to think about this. I had clients the other day who were in their early 30s and they wanted to do powers of attorney. The young man is in business, he's a successful businessman, and he could see the difficulties which might arise for his young wife if a power of attorney wasn't in place.
Yes, well, do you know, I was speaking to someone just the other day, and she's in her late 30s, and she said to me she has got this in place.
Yes.
And I was really surprised because I knew I was going to be chatting to you, and I thought it just shows you, you know, it's good that people do think ahead, isn't it? Well, thank you so much for all your advice.
You're very welcome.
And we look forward to you chatting to you again soon. Okay.
Thank you, Vivian.
Well, Well, thanks for tuning in again this week, folks. I won't be on my own. Next week I'll have Vivian back in the co-host chair. But remember, we always want to hear from you. We want to hear about your news and your events and any business news and things that's happening as well. So always remember to email us on info@perthshireonline.co.uk, or you can actually message us on Facebook or on Twitter as well.